The Face of Homelessness is brought to you by the Eastside Community Taskforce on Homelessness, an organization working to help prevent homelessness in our communities. King County is home to many of the most successful companies in the world, including Microsoft, Amazon, Starbucks, Expedia, and Costco. Washington State's educational system is rated the fourth best in the United States, and its crown jewel, the University of Washington, has the fifth largest research and development budget in the country, larger than Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and Duke. These companies and the educational system create good-paying jobs and a well-educated workforce. As a result, Eastside cities have some of the most affluent neighborhoods in our state. How can homelessness exist in an area that is so wealthy? In King County, at the last single-day count, there were about 12,000 people experiencing homelessness, with the East Side accounting for about 1,000 of those people. Washington State has the fifth highest number of people experiencing homelessness per capita in the US. Who are the people that experience homelessness? What can be done about it? These are the questions that we will explore with you in 2 video presentations. You will learn more about the causes and challenges of homelessness, meet people who lived under these conditions, hear about government efforts to tackle these problems, and work on ways to help nonprofit organizations. It's a complex issue that has many contributing factors. Nearly everyone is concerned about this problem, but most are uninformed about the issues, and few are willing to give their time and resources to help end homelessness. Our purpose is to provide you with background information, facts, and figures on the many aspects of homelessness so that you are more aware of the issues and can contribute to the solutions. Present the personal face of homelessness that exists throughout our communities, and introduce you to the skills needed to create and execute fundraiser projects to help those experiencing homelessness. Why is this important, and why should you care? These are personal questions that we all need to ask ourselves. It comes down to whether we can feel compassion and empathy for those that are suffering and can't help themselves. How we treat the poor and the suffering says a lot about us as a person, as a country, and as a civilization, our values, principles, and priorities. Ironically, it is the wealthiest of areas that experience the greatest degree of homelessness. In part, this is due to the high cost of living within wealthy areas, resulting in some people not being able to afford the high housing expense. Wiping out homelessness would improve the quality of life of both those that suffer from homelessness and all the communities that are negatively impacted by its presence. Reducing homelessness and the poverty and addiction that comes along with it can reduce crime and help revitalize business areas that have been impacted. What does homelessness look like? You have probably seen pictures of people sleeping in building doorways or in ramshackle tents pitched under bridges. These are the visible signs of homelessness in our community. But there are many less visible ways that people experience homelessness. In the worst of circumstances, people are unsheltered, sleeping on the street, in parks, and in forested areas. These are the people most vulnerable to suffering from the outdoor elements and from the threat of assault or abuse. They are less likely to be connected to organizations that provide assistance, food, medical and mental health care, alcohol and drug addiction counseling, etc. Many are able to find some form of temporary shelter, but without organizational support. This form of shelter can be occupying vacant buildings, vehicles, tents, couch surfing with friends and relatives, or short stays in hotels. The threat of violent crime is present, and access to food and services remain challenging. A handful of safe parking programs exist for people living in vehicles. There are Tent City 4 and Camp Unity on the Eastside, offering security, services, and community. Residents must pass a background check, and alcohol and drugs are prohibited. Everyone must do their part in running the camps. Organized shelters or transitional housing with qualified support staff is the best situation. Case managers assist residents to secure permanent housing and viable employment. Treatment is available for those experiencing mental health or addiction problems. Clearly, one picture of a panhandler or someone sleeping on the sidewalk does not describe the entire scope of homelessness. Let's listen to Celine, a single mom with 2 daughters in high school, tell her story about becoming homeless.
My name is Celine Barnes. Went to high school, went to college at WSU. Came to Seattle in '98 looking for a job, starting off a new life. Married, divorced, and has continued to be working. We were on subsidized housing until our last place, the housing authority said we had to move. During the 2 years that we were there, we had slumlords. Our medicine cabinets were falling out of the walls. We had roaches in the place. We had a hot water heater that was busted. So I took it upon myself to call the Section 8 inspector. So the inspector wrote up a report for them. They didn't like that. I tried to pay the rent. They refused to take the rent and chose to evict us. While we were trying to fight the eviction, of course, that made us homeless. Meaning that anytime you apply someplace, they see an eviction on your record, you can't move into the place. So our attorneys finally was able to fight to vacate the eviction because they were able to prove that it was illegal to begin with. So we got rid of the eviction. Then they turned around and tried to say that we did damages to the place to the tune of $5,000. After 9 months, almost a year of being homeless, we found a private landlord who was willing to work with us, and that's how we were able to get off the street. It was rough because it was nothing ever stable. It was really hard on my youngest daughter, the stress that it was on her, not sleeping, stomach aches, the instability of our lives. They were still able to, I'm going to say, in a way, disguise it. So I'm not exactly sure if she told her best friend or not, but for the most part, according to them, they kept it pretty quiet. Ending homelessness or not being homeless is more than just finding a home. We've had to start over. My current situation is I'm working. We still have housing, subsidized housing, but things are still a stretch, Don't have good credit to do anything. And always worrying about that instability of having to move. I think COVID has really struck a nerve with people. Some of them are actually seeing homelessness right in their face. If you're $15,000 behind in rent, how are you going to catch up with that? The moratorium's only going to last so long. So my biggest word is do not judge, because you don't know what's going to happen. There is no security.
Who are the homeless? First, let's take a look at raw numbers. In the most recent count by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, over 21,500 people were experiencing homelessness in Washington state, or 30 people per 10,000 residents. Washington state ranks as the 5th highest state in the U.S. on a per capita basis behind New York, Hawaii, Oregon, and California. When looking at the US map of people experiencing homelessness per 10,000 residents, what are some of the patterns that stand out? What are some of the reasons for the high number of homeless along the West Coast? There are a number of factors, but high cost of living, mild weather, seasonal migrant worker patterns, and governmental tolerance are contributing reasons. Looking closer to home, annual counts show over 11,500 people in King County experience homelessness at any given time. Long-term tracking shows about 22,500 households experience at least one episode of homelessness each year. This is roughly twice the number of people counted on any one day. That means there is a rotation of people in and out of homelessness throughout the year. For many, homelessness is temporary, and a large number are actively seeking ways to transition into stable housing. The graph at the right shows the number of both sheltered and unsheltered homeless. There was a big rise in the total population between the years 2014 and 2018. Notice that the increase in total homeless people all came from an increase in those unsheltered. The number of sheltered homeless has stayed about the same over the past 15 years, even though additional shelter facilities have been built. The data indicates newer shelters are replacing older facilities, but not increasing total capacity. On the Eastside, 949 people were homeless last year, with 53% in shelters and 47% unsheltered, about the same ratio as for all of King County. Like in the general population, the homeless consist of all races, ages, and sexual orientations. But the numbers of homeless BIPOC, that is Black, Indigenous, and people of color, are disproportionately high. For example, in King County, about 25% of the homeless are Black, while only 7% of the overall population is Black. There were over 3,700 families with children experiencing homelessness. Historically, the homeless have been mostly men, and that still holds true with 56% male and 41% female. But the number of women entering homelessness has been trending higher. Sadly, about 1/3 of single homeless men are military veterans. Although sometimes hard to find, homelessness exists in all communities, wealthy and poor, urban and rural. Many do not have the means, resources, or capabilities to support themselves. They remain homeless for years at a time, and tragically, only exit homelessness with their death. Homelessness can be particularly hard on the young and lead to long-term instability. Friends of Youth, a nonprofit focusing on helping homeless youth, has found the number one cause for homeless youth is family crisis, including 60% experience abuse, 75% have or will drop out of school. Of those that are able to get into care and intervention programs, 50% are still unprepared for independence. Some youth choose to be homeless, at least temporarily. There can appear to be an attractiveness to the freedom of not having possessions or responsibilities, as long as they can get their basic needs satisfied. This initial attraction does not last long. Many are working hard to exit homelessness, but they need a helping hand. 21% are employed and saving money for a deposit on an apartment or to purchase a car. What are the causes of homelessness? Poverty is a major cause. Not having the ability to earn enough to meet basic needs of food, shelter, and medical care. Poverty is driven by inadequate education and training, which can lead to good paying jobs. Even for people with the needed education and training, there can be a lack of job opportunities. And when landing a job, the wages may not be high enough to exit poverty. The federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour has not increased since 2009. That is obviously not a living wage for an expensive area such as King County. Efforts have been made to raise the minimum wage in Washington state to help people out of poverty. In 2021, the Washington state minimum wage is $13.69 per hour, and in Seattle, it is $16.69 per hour. The cost of housing is a leading contributor to keeping people in poverty, which can lead to homelessness. Even if a single person is working full-time, 40 hours per week, 52 weeks per year, at the state's minimum wage, it would require 73% of those earnings to pay for the median-priced apartment. Only 27% would remain for food, utilities, car expenses, clothing, etc. King County has seen particularly high increases in rental prices in recent years. The graph on the right shows rent increased over 70% between 2009 and 2017. Over the same period, while the population increased 12%, the supply of housing increased only 8%. The laws of economics tells us when the supply of housing doesn't keep up with the increase in demand, prices go up. It is reported that 112,000 affordable units were lost between 2010 and 2018 to families that earn below 80% of the area's median income, where affordable means spending less than 30% of income on housing. In all of King County, with a population of 2.3 million people, there are only 24,000 rental units that are considered affordable to people who make less than $22,800, which is less than 30% of the area's median income. There are other causes of homelessness besides poverty: drug and alcohol addiction, youth aging out of foster care, people discharged from prisons or mental hospitals, a sudden health condition creating unemployment and large medical bills, long-term disabilities, and mental health conditions can make day-to-day functioning a challenge. The self-reported causes of homelessness in a recent survey show the variety of causes. Job loss, 16%. Drug and alcohol addiction, 11%. Rent is unaffordable, 8%. Mental health issues, 8%. These results show that there is a mix of economic, health, and addiction causes that contribute to the homelessness problem. What are the solutions to homelessness? The best solution is to prevent homelessness from happening in the first place. Many non-profit organizations work to help people avoid being evicted from their homes by providing rent and utilities assistance. Food banks and discount stores with pre-owned clothing and furniture help people suffering from poverty make their money go farther. The government SNAP or food stamp program provides funds to meet basic food needs. Efforts to create more affordable housing, while at the same time expanding employment opportunities and raising wages, would help many low-income families maintain stable housing and avoid the threat of homelessness. Drug and alcohol addiction are medical conditions that can lead to similar results as those who suffer from mental health conditions. They just cannot function with the required stability and reliability to maintain employment and secure their own housing. Worse yet, Their addictions often lead to crime in order to feed their habits. Those suffering from addictions need help through medical intervention programs and support groups such as Narcotics Anonymous. Lower cost, higher quality medical and mental health care could help avoid the crushing debt caused by experiencing a serious medical condition. Providing adequate support for those that are being discharged from mental hospitals, jails, prisons, and foster care would help prevent them from falling into homelessness. Once people find themselves homeless, it can be doubly difficult to transition out of homelessness. It's a challenge to find employment when you have no address to provide in an application, your clothes are tattered, and your body is filthy. And once you do have a job, it's difficult to save up the deposit needed to get into an apartment. Governmental programs and non-profit organizations provide some transitional housing and housing assistance programs. Day centers and emergency shelters that provide meals, showers, and laundry facilities can give the homeless a chance at being prepared and presentable for job interviews. Job training and programs to promote living wages will help people exit homelessness and keep them in stable housing situations. Childcare can be provided to parents who have the skills and willingness to work but are unable to find childcare. Healthcare, mental health, and drug and alcohol addiction counseling can allow the homeless a degree of stability to find employment, reclaim their former lives, and transition out of homelessness. People experiencing homelessness need the guidance of case managers or life coaches to help them navigate a world that feels hopeless, frightening, and out of control. Our next story of homelessness is from Josh.
My name is Joshua Borson. I'm 36. I'm from Newport Richey, Florida. I have 3 brothers. We all follow a year behind each other, so 4, 3, 2, and 1. Around the time I was 9 or 10, we went to live with my grandmother. Me and my brothers all ended up getting separated because they went to different family members. And then around the time I was like 12 or something, I started using drugs myself. I dropped out of school at 15, so I was kind of just like running amok, you know. And I ended up moving out here almost 5 years ago. I was homeless when I first got here, and then I was going to shelters and stuff for like 90 days, and then I got housing, lost it because I was still getting high, still using drugs, getting arrested all the time, just always in trouble, and so I was back on the street again, and then I was homeless for maybe 4 years, and finally I just got to the point where it's like overdosing all the time, in and out of jail all the time, like hated myself, hated my life, so I went to detox, and I went to treatment in Yakima at Sundown, and now I've been clean like 7 months. I mean, the lowest time was definitely times where, you know, you're living outside. For me, like maybe someone would like steal all my stuff, or the cops would come raid where I'm at. So now I'm outside, no food, hungry, withdrawing from drugs, sick, in the rain in Seattle or in the cold, and it's just like, what do? You know what I mean? Like, where do you even go at that point? You know, you're just like stuck, you know, and it's hard when you're putting substances into your body to even think about a way out, you know, because I just got so tired of it every day, you know. I wasn't living my life. I was just surviving day to day with the bare minimum, and not even that. And then my health was horrible. I wasn't sleeping. My mental health was even worse, you know, because I couldn't think straight. And I just kept piling more and more drugs on, you know, and it just made it a million times worse. There were services, but I don't think I was willing most of the time to actually use them, you know. I lost everything. I mean, I lost my son. Every member of my family wouldn't talk to me. I had no friends, so I was just alone, you know, and then I thought I was like losing my mind too, you know. I was thinking about suicide all the time, like, because I was hopeless, and it was just the same thing every day, and it just was horrible. And so I just started making phone calls, and I called Sundown and Ranch. I everyone here knows about Sundown, like one of the best places in the country. I was there for a month and it was awesome. When I first got there, I was really nervous. I'd never been in treatment before, and I knew that I would have to be around a bunch of men that I don't know, and I'd have to talk and share like my life and stuff with them. But like after like the first 3 days, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna throw myself headfirst into this. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, all that's still gonna be out there waiting for me if I want to go back to it. But like I started to learn like self-care and like loving myself, actually caring what I put into my body, learning about what addiction was doing to my brain, like trauma from my past that was making me use, you know what I mean? And when I was there, I would share my story with people, or in meetings, I would share my experience, and someone would say that it helped. And then I started to feel like empathy, and I started to get like a purpose a little bit. And that's why I was like, when I come home, I want to help people. That's what I want to do. Because if I went through all this and I can't help somebody else, like, what was the point? It's awesome. You know? I came home. I got a certificate to do peer counseling. I'm enrolled for education studies in Edmonds Community College. I'm an NA, Narcotics Anonymous, every week, you know. It's so fragile, what I have right now, like not just being clean, but having some stability in my life and actually having a real family, like people that are there for me regardless, and they don't judge me, and it's been great. And I didn't think I could ever get here, you know what I mean? Because I was so, like I said, I was so hopeless. Like I could never have seen the light at the end of the tunnel, you know what I mean? But then once I started to see it a little bit, like I'm like holding on to it for dear life now. I know my life's really good. Like I never thought I'd be saying that.
In King County, a new expanded homelessness services program has been established using funds made available by the Federal American Rescue Plan. $100 million will be allocated to bring more than 500 people experiencing homelessness off the streets and into shelters. The funding will go toward construction of tiny homes, support of large-scale shelters, expanded behavioral health services, and housing vouchers. An additional $40 million will go toward a jobs program to employ 400 people living in shelters or housing programs, as well as rental assistance for people in shelters. For 2021, over $125 million is being made available for the county's eviction prevention and rent assistance program, which is a sizable increase over the $37 million spent on the program in 2020. Due to the pandemic and the statewide moratorium on evictions, thousands of tenants are at risk of losing their homes once the moratorium is lifted. Bellevue Mayor Lynn Robinson shares that the city is taking a multifaceted approach to working with their homeless population, as there is no one solution for all. Years ago, Bellevue focused on serving homeless men. But as the city grows, the city has taken responsibility for all groups finding themselves experiencing homelessness, including men, women, and youth. The city has a full-time homeless coordinator and many other human service staff members working with agencies that address the various needs of the homeless. Mayor Penny Sweet of Kirkland says that the city is committed to addressing the complex issue of homelessness through a multi-pronged approach. Kirkland supports increased affordable housing and collaboration with other jurisdictions and organizations in the region to provide 24/7 shelter and critical human services. The city also gives assistance to unsheltered people by funding a full-time street and vehicle outreach mental health professional. Redmond's Mayor, Angela Burney, states that Redmond is working to compassionately address homelessness by connecting people to resources. A full-time outreach specialist partners and coordinates with the police department, businesses, nonprofits, and the broader community. The city invested in a safety net of resources in 2021, with $1.8 million for human services and $850,000 going to programs for individuals and families experiencing or at risk of homelessness. Redmond is currently working on a strategic plan to set the city's direction and goals for the next 5 years.